Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kitabe Club. Here we are talking about three main virtues in life. So, when we speak about three virtues, the first one I'm going to talk about is service with Guru Nanak, kindness with Mahavira, and peace with Buddha. So, to discuss this further, to take this conversation further, I have Chitwan Mittal from Aridev Press, who is the writer, rather author for the series, who is the publisher, who is the person behind Adidev. And we also have Debasmita Dasgupta, who is a book illustrator, a graphic novelist, and screenwriter. Welcome to Kitabe Club, guys.
Thank you for having us here. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Okay, when we talk about three virtues, that is service, kindness, and peace, we are discussing here, primarily, we are discussing here kindness. Um, Tell me, Chitwan, something that your series, this three-book series, is named as Learning to Be, where it could have been very easily said as, something like Saints of India or Saints we look up to, something of that sort. Why you went to a different topic as such, Learning to Be?
The Learning to Be title was inspired by a UNESCO report on education of the same name, Learning to Be. It showcases how education has progressed over time. A large part of formal education started off with getting children to know the basics of reading, writing, mathematics, and trying to prepare them to get jobs and work and learn to do certain skill sets. But in the last few decades, we have evolved our understanding of education. And this report kind of showcased the four pillars of education, which were learning to know. So it's not just knowing things anymore, but learning how to learn, basically. Learning to do, learning to live together, which is very, very important now, harmony, and learning to be the essence of what a human being should be. So the series has a larger purpose of value oriented education and getting children to focus on these core values of humanity. So it's vaster than it's less about the saints and more about the core values that came from their messages. And also the series doesn't end here, it just begins here.
Oh,
And goes it will go on to have books on other personalities who can be inspiring and can motivate us to focus on these values or different values. So, but core and
yeah.
universal values.
I would ask you for some secrets by the end of the session, like which are the other personalities the books are going to come up. But as a mother, I would certainly say that, Chitwan, I like my kids, my nieces and nephews to inculcate this virtues, this habits, or this an entire, I would say कि आप बच्चे को ना एक सिर्फ academic बच्चा नहीं बनाना चाहते हो, आप चाहते हो कि वो एक kind human being बने. तो ये चीजें जो है आप लिख के भी कर सकते थे. You could have written those things, but Debasmita, you bring in a different variety, different perspective to the entire book with the help of illustrations. Why illustrations are needed for something as simple as, I'm using the word simple because we think that kindness comes easily, but why illustrations are necessary?
Well, first of all, thanks to Chitwan because this is her concept, this is her baby. So it was her idea. Um, Illustrations in board books is not new. It's
True.
common, but this whole idea of investing in quality illustrations, investing in illustrations which are more engaging with the audience, illustrations where you identify with yourself, all these things were part of the making of these books, and that's what makes it much more interesting and goes beyond any board book that you have in the market per se. So that's why what Chitwan was saying, this whole concept of learning to be, to become somebody, to get inspired by these people, uh, you also need that somehow complemented with visuals, because visuals go one step ahead of just words. And we are talking about board books which are for children, right? Children who have not even started reading. So they don't read the words, but they could read the visuals, the images. So that was the idea behind these illustrations.
Yeah, if I can add, I mean, I was very keen on finding someone who can take the text to a higher level to make it very subtle and uplifting, and not to do the typical style of illustrations. I think I went to several illustrations with, particularly the page you showed about the girl being very kind to ants. And I got this page illustrated and samples done many times. And I
Absolutely.
found Devasmita's illustration so subtle, it's not like in your face, it's very gentle somehow, and it just I fell in love with it. So
Thank you
I
so
was sure
much.
she's the one who can take this and take it to the next level.
She's
Very
very
true. I mean, I
kind.
just, there is one thing I would like to point out because there is a page, I think so, somewhere in the book that it says, to friends in school or mom at home, to the old man walking all alone. This page particularly changed the way my son looked at me when I'm working on laptop. So when this was a very contrasting way of asking Debasmita why illustrations are necessary because I you cannot imagine what happened. I was working on the laptop and we have read this book together, and this boy comes in and I'm just he's just massaging my shoulders and he's like, oh my god, this is the impact your illustrations had, Dev Smita, and I wanted to say you this loud in person that what a wonderful book this is. But
I
at the
think this
same
made my
time,
day.
Mhm.
oh, and every word of it when I'm saying is totally 100% genuine. But at the same time, when you were starting with this series, Learning to Be, there's already so much literature available on religious natures. We have kids' book which are for whatsoever reason connected to a specific religion or our religious beliefs. What made you put differently the same idea, Chitwan? Because it is a bit of religion, I would say, not particularly in detail, but a bit of it. And at the same time, were you ever concerned about the fact that this is not a typical book? So
I
how do
don't
you
want
went
to
about
create
it?
typical books. So, I mean, like I said, the book is less about religion and more about the universal core values that are for everyone. So it's not like I want the Jain children to read the Mahavir book or the Buddhist children to read the book. I think everybody can read all the books and be inspired by the values from the what are the essence of that religion, and they're not contradictory to each other. It's not like only Mahavir said be kind and Guru Nanak didn't say that, but it is trying to explain what the saints said and their essential message in a very simple way so that children can understand. And I think that idea that this needs to be a universal book that children from all over the world can read, not just Buddhist, Jain, or Sikh children, but any child all over the world can enjoy and appreciate what the idea is behind this book. And I think that was what I gave the brief to Debasmith also. I said, I don't want to only have Indian children or Asian children or just brown children, or in the Sikh book, only Sikh child. In fact, I've received a lot of like praise for that page, where there's next to Guru Nanak, there are three children watching. And it's not just Sikh children who can appreciate Guru Nanak's teaching. So Devasmita has drawn one Sikh boy, but the other children could be
I
anyone.
know it.
And
Yes.
actually, people are noticing that and coming and saying, was that a conscious decision? I said, yes, all along we wanted, that was the idea, that this book is for everyone. And so I think that is with that vision we created the books.
It delivers very well because there are a couple of pages in the book which I don't want to discuss at this point because that gives you a lot of insight about the book where you have discussed so beautifully that how a vegetarian kid and a meat-eating kid or a non-vegetarian kid could simultaneously function. And it is one of the most loved pages I had in the entire book. The illustration and the text in just 4 lines to the entire justice. I have thought of that books like this are meant more for adults and equally for kids, not any less, but they are equally done. Tell me, Dipsmita, you are a graphic novelist, you are a children's book illustrator. But when it comes to children books, my mind first goes to cartoon or cartoonish characters. So how different was it for you to, do a book which pointed towards saints but more focused on virtues or values?
I think, the point that you mentioned, that this book is not just for children, and this is what I always have in mind, because uh, I have this favorite line that I always say, that my books are for children of all ages, which means
Okay.
we're all children. If you love picture books, if you love visuals, if you enjoy reading graphic novels, then you are a child, and that's the good thing. The beauty is that that honesty is still there in you. It has not died. So you're still ready to learn. You're still eager, and you're still curious. And that's why I think these books that Adidev Press has created, these books have that ethos, that it goes, first of all, it's a board book. I mean, I'm talking
Yeah.
about these books especially. These are board books. These are always read to a child. So a parent and child is involved in a dialogue already with the beginning of the book, the format of the book. And then when you're reading it, and I wanted to mention particularly in Peace with Buddha, I remember there was a point when Chitwan and I had that conversation. It was so beautifully written that you see a very relatable situation, like what she was also saying, that it's not about, of course it's about big values, but how do you bring those big values in a simplistic way, in a relatable way in your life, and not just through words but also through visuals. You get to see those moments and you say, oh yes, I mean, I can totally relate to Buddha, or I can totally relate to Mahavira, or Guru Nanak, because you don't have to be an adult and then understand religion and then understand these people. You could be at any stage of your life. If you just want to be kind, if you just want to be at peace with yourself, if you want to do service to somebody, that's it. And that's where the journey begins, and that's where this the dialogue begins, and that was the idea behind these illustrations as well.
Very true. Certainly, I would agree to this. When you are mentioning that you were discussing something, Chitwan, this would have required a lot of research because it's a huge topic. What to include, what not to include, starting from the words like kindness, peace. How did you zero down upon what topic you want to present, what points you want to include in the book?
I think these kind of books are something that has been at the back of your head for maybe a decade, and then it kind of evolves. I think I've always been a student of philosophy, and I like reading philosophy and books on spirituality. And I mentioned to someone earlier that when I was younger, we used to have all these lectures in our house on philosophy. And after my college and things, I was involved in doing some teacher training, workshops for B.Ed students, which were on philosophy and of different saints. There's a book by Orwell Press called The Aim of Life, which takes the viewpoint of different saints and puts it in a very simple manner, but that's also still for like B.Ed students or maybe high school students. So I was engaged in conducting those workshops for B.Ed students, and so I was always thinking, how can this be put, to a younger audience? And so when Adidev Press came about, I did more research and I consulted a few more texts. One of them being Indian Philosophy by Radhakrishnan,
Oh,
and
yes.
so between that and Aim of Life and a little more research, I was able to. I mean, I picked a few saints and then I said, let's read and see how we can simplify their core message, in a very relatable terms. And that's how it came about.
I'm glad that you brought this out and you brought it out in the most perfect manner. There is nothing more, nothing less I would want in this book. Very honestly, there's nothing more, nothing less I want in this book. The illustrations, the text, they do perfect justice to the entire concept you are bringing throughout the book. But Dipsmita, this still rings some bells in my head, and I'm like, did you rework on some illustrations or some areas where you wanted it to be no? When this one is my favorite. The piece you look at in the eyes and the little child. You see a little, with the eyes and everything. You see a little child in that. So, did you rework on some pages?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, nothing is perfect, right? And if you are, in fact, if I get a chance to redo these books, I will redo them. I
Done.
feel like okay, I can recreate the illustration. It will be much better. I just have to convince Chitwan. but, but that's I think that's always with creative work, and we're always, of course, feedback is something, and it's a collaborative job. I remember when Chitwan first approached me and we had a long conversation about collaboration. I always feel picture books, I mean, any book is a collaboration, or any creative work is a collaboration in the end, but picture books in particular, they are supposed to be a collaborative job. There is an author, there's a publisher, there's a marketeer, there's an illustrator, there's so many people involved in it, and of course there's a reader in the end. So you have to keep all of them in mind when you're creating something. And constructive criticism is always welcome, and that's how you create something better. Through dialogue you create something better. So I mean, I did a lot of illustrations. In fact, um, there were different, especially with Buddha, I remember, because I had created a different story for Buddha at some point, with Pratham, and then I showed those illustrations to Chitwan, and we both agreed that we don't want, that was more cartoonish Buddha, so we didn't
Okay.
want that. We also wanted these characters to be more human, because these
Yes.
stories are end of the day for children to relate to them. So if they're more cartoonish, then somehow I feel like the values will get diluted. So we didn't want that. So yes, to answer your question, definitely, there was a lot of I won't say back and forth, but a lot of creative discussions in bringing out the characters and bringing out the pages, and how am I visualizing it? And Chitwan also had some ideas, so we kind of discussed all those things. And just one more point to add over there, because these are also historical figures. So sometimes, my research is always related to getting photographs and then getting the inspiration from there. So, for example, in case of Mahavira, we didn't have many resources, so there was also a lot of imagination going in there. So it was a combination of dialogue and imagination and a lot of creative discussions.
Very true. I do see a lot of a lot of mixture out there, wherein not the mixture is not the right word out here, blending out there when you see Mahavira as a saint and what he is being presented in the manner where we connect him with the 21st century. So there is a mom on a laptop, there is a child who is sitting in the garden. So that blending comes out very beautifully in the book. But you don't tell me that. When it comes to these books, because you are the author also out here and you have been part of collaborating with the illustrator also, do the font sizes, the way the texts are written, where they are written, do they play a role? I'm sure they would, but do they play a role for the reader also? Would it make any difference to me if it is not written in a particular font or a style?
Absolutely. I think font was something we discussed quite a lot. And in the beginning, we tried a handwritten font. And then eventually, I think we decided that because these books are also for early readers, it's it's very important for the font to be very legible. A child is just beginning to learn what an H or an L looks like. And if it's done in a very artistic manner, they might get confused or even get distracted, whereas they need to focus on the text and the illustration. So Debasmita has done beautiful handwritten font in certain pages, and that actually brings the focus to the message. For example, this
Oh,
one, like to be kind, to be
oh,
kind, to be kind.
oh, these are
But in the rest,
handwritten. Okay.
yeah, so some of the text is
Wow.
in handwritten font, which kind of highlights the portions where you want the highlight. But in other places where it's an early reader and there's a little more text, you want the text to be very clear for the child to read. So we ended up going with a very simple, very readable font, which I think works better for this age group. So that was.
Wow, that is felt, and the way you have written it, I never found it, Dev Smita, that's handwritten. Thank you, Chitwan, for sharing this insights. That makes the book very connectable for me. Um, when we are discussing this book particularly, there is there is one curious angle to it now that what other saints or personalities you'll see in coming future?
So we are working on a set of women in science. We have the
Okay.
first botanist from India. We have the first oceanographer, the first woman in medicine, and the first physicist. So that's a set of women in science that should be coming out soon. It's almost done. There is sportswomen. There is a 4 books on sportswomen. That is very exciting. We have the yeah. I don't want to give up everything away, but there's
No, no, I understand.
sportswomen, and then we're also working on a few performing artists after that. So this series is growing and is very exciting. I think I'm personally very excited about this series.
Very true. I mean, I'm looking forward to this one because the kind of little tidbits we have given are very interesting. These are the books we have never seen across in Indian markets where the I don't know. I don't want to ask you more. Where I want to ask you more, but I won't ask you more. But Chitwan, there is one thing which I have noticed about all the books those are come under under Adidev Press that you haven't compromised on the quality and the content. Where we see when it comes to Debasmita also, the illustrations are fabulous. When it comes to uh, not compromising on quality and the content part, where in Indian market or otherwise market, anything is sold. Anything is sold, you know. So what made you stick to these particular pointers?
Now, for me, I think that was one of the main things when I started Adidev Press, that I wanted to make high quality books. I wanted the child to be, able to touch and feel and hold and enjoy that book. I didn't want, especially for board books, I was quite sure. I spent a lot of time finding the right printer because for me, I didn't want the board that's like bends and that's like weak. I
Mm,
wanted it to be international quality, and that was a very important focus for me, and that to stand out and to do books that are of very high quality, and we didn't compromise in terms of printing. And of course, I mean, without the text and illustrations, it's nothing. You don't want to do the run of the mill text and illustration which everybody is doing, and then what is the point of creating one other publishing house doing the same thing? So it has to be something unique with some different thought process, and we stuck to that. I mean, I think even all the books that are coming out in the future, I expect even our audience to hold us to that standard.
okay. Um, Yeah, I just lost you for a couple of words, but I do get your points that, and I'm very closely following what books you are bringing in, what are the next book coming up,
Thank you.
because of the quality and the content you are bringing. That's what I, on a closing note, what would you say when it comes to these books being service the kind of being serving the kind of vision you have. So there are some books we or some places where we work upon and they deliver different outlook than what we intended. And here where I see these books, I feel that okay, I am knowing the real Dave Smith as the illustrator. What what it makes you feel that way?
What it makes me
What
feel that.
Yeah, because this is what I think so. It's what a content, what you would like to deliver as a person. This is what I am interpreting. So when you see them out in the market with people loving them, what do you feel about it?
Well,
Mhm.
my the first time when I read about the brief and when Chitwan and I talked about it, the most interesting thing to me, and which I knew is going to work later with all the readers, will be, like
Okay.
Stuck.
Yes. So the last two. Okay.
okay,
So how
uh,
is the
Ah,
feel? Yeah, yeah, you're
she's
back.
back.
Yeah, you're back.
yeah. So the thing is, when I was growing up, if you talk about Mahavira or Guru Nanak or Buddha, it was a piece of history. You learn about a lot of milestones in their lives, and you remember those dates, and that's it. But what better way to tell a story about a human being if it's not stories and if it's not visual stories? visual stories always create a much larger impact on you. They will stay with you forever. And that's what I felt when we were creating these books. And I know that that is the response we are also getting from people, whoever. I have a friend, she wrote to me, she's Muslim, and she told me, "Oh, I saw these books and they're so nice. Do you have something about, like, let's say, all any other people from Islam?" So I told her it's not just about religion. We are looking at something beyond that. It's not just about religion, but it's about the values that we're talking about. And that is where I think, and she got very interested. She said, "I would love to read, and I would like to buy all these books for my children and my nephews and nieces, because this is what you want to tell them, and not in a very literal way. Even the illustrations, that's why we didn't want to make like literal illustrations." So that is the response I'm getting, and I'm feeling fantastic that we have been able to create what we intended, and that makes you feel proud.
Very true. I 100% resonate with the fact because I ordered this book with a certain mindset, and but when I read it, it is different. So when a couple of my friends also spoke to me about this book, particularly being a book for the kids of Jainism, I said no, it is not. It is not what you are looking at the cover and by the name of it. It is something else. And kudos to both of you for delivering in the best way possible. Like I said initially, also I want nothing more and nothing less. This is apt for me.
Actually, I
Thank
just want
you.
to add there one point. I mean,
Hmm?
also, one more credit point to Chitwan, because for illustrators, when we create illustrations, I mean, it's a laborious job. It's a time-consuming job. We spend months creating something. But then if you see the publisher has not done the best job, and for whatever reasons, if the quality is not that, you've created an illustration with a certain texture in mind, and finally you see the book and you feel like, oh, I did so much for these textures, but they didn't come out well. So Chitwan paid a lot of attention to that. I know the conversations we had when she was looking for the right printer. So yeah, that's always a great point for any illustrator. They would love to work with Adidev Press in the future.
Thank you.
Oh, that's the constant thing I hear about Chitwan. That's the constant one thing that comes whenever we talk about Chitwan. And I would just say that up and upwards. You have created a different benchmark because when we recommend books to young mothers, also it's always about the international books. But I won't say that this is an international book. I would say that this is by an Indian publisher, but yes, this is super when it comes to quality and content.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you.
And thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful conversation, and hope to see you soon, more and more, with so many books coming up in future.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you for having us here.
Okay, I think so. Debasmita is frozen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.